Bible. We're recording. Alright, then let me go ahead and take time right now to put on Do Not Disturb is on finally. There we go. Alright, you ready? Alright, Father, we ask this fine people with open eyes and open ears as always. Today is January 1st, 2023. And this is my little Bible study. And tonight we're doing a special study in the book of Genesis, or continuing with our special study in the book of Genesis. All right. We methodically went through about the first 5 or 6 verses, and like we were just talking about, spent a few hours actually covering all of it. And people are often astounded to find out that there is that much actually in the Bible, about actually the first few verses of the Bible that doesn't really cover in the book of Genesis, but it's actually covered in other parts of the Bible. It really gets interesting. Now, without the knowledge of the first heaven and earth age, the one that's destroyed in verse 2, okay, without understanding that, you get misinformed really on what's actually being created in the book of Genesis. You try to make day one of creation the day one of the beginning of everything, when in reality it's not the beginning of everything, it's just the beginning of this heaven and earth age. Right? And because people don't really understand that into any kind of detail, then you have these false doctrines that begin to be built up within Christianity involving the age of the earth. That's where the ideas about it only being a few thousand years old actually come from. And we get openly mocked as a group, as Christians, and we should be. I mean, in reality, if you stand up in the 21st century and you try to tell the people that God says the world is 7,000 years old, well, people laugh at you, and rightly they should, because everything, that's right, everything that we see around us indicates something completely different. And I always like to point out to people, God says, I do nothing in secret. I do everything out in the open. So just look around and see what you see around you. And He's done all of these things in the open for you to understand. All right, so with bearing that in mind then, the first day of creation, day one, we talked about the division of the light. And we understand then that it's not actually talking about photons, but we're talking about the reestablishment of the heavenly realm. The one in the book of Luke, where the parable of the Lazarus and the rich man go with the great gulf of fixed in the middle that nobody can cross, where the light is actually divided from the darkness. And you can look the Bible front to back, and that's the only place you can have that clarified is within that parable. And it's very interesting because that ties into the old book of Job and Genesis right in there with the New Testament canon that's developed. Okay, so day one we have the division of the light. Now day two, we're on the firmament. And let's see what it says. Genesis chapter 6, verse 1. Day 2 of creation of this, the second heaven and earth age. Now, day 1 doesn't even take place on earth. All right, and day 2 doesn't really affect earth in too much of a way either, right? Let's see what it says. And God said, let there be light. And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. Now, all my life, people have tried to convince me that this means atmosphere. That's firmament. Now, atmosphere is a pretty modern word, really. I mean, it has old roots like every other word that we have, but it's really a modern construct of a word. They didn't really have anything that's equivalent to atmosphere, except for words like air, and sky, which are ones used in the next couple of verses. But they're Hebrew words that have nothing to do with the word firmament, which is rakiah in Hebrew. Let's go ahead and just look it up. Turn on my Strong's here. Firmament. Rakiah, it comes from 7554, properly an expanse, right? That is a firmament or apparently. Now, that apparently is in parentheses in the definition, right? They're saying something's going on in the sky and we don't know. We think it could be the visible arch of the sun moving across the sky. That's why it's parenthetical in the definition. The visible arch of the sky or the firmament. But it comes from 7554, which is the root, which means to pound the earth, as a sign of passion. By analogy, to expand by hammering. By implication, to overlay in thin sheets of metal. To break, make words like that. So to pound, to expand like a sheet of metal. So if you take a sheet of metal and you put it down on the anvil and you take a hammer and you keep hitting it in one spot over and over and over, what's going to happen is the metal continues to thin until eventually you make a hole in it. All right, and that's really what the term firmament means, an expanse or a hole. Biblically, when you hear the term "and the heavens were opened up," all right, it's talking about this, the firmament. When you hear, what was another good one? All right, well, let's just go on. We'll find out because we'll run onto them as we go. All right, but nonetheless, air, sky, none of these words actually fit in here with rakiyah, which you have other Hebrew words actually mean those specific things, and they're used here in the book of Genesis as well. So here we don't really have the firmament. Now, if you take the word firmament and you use your Strongs, I'm going to do all this right here if I can. All right, we're going to search for it. All right, now what you're going to find out is the word firmament is used 15 times, or 15 verses with 17 matches. So you got a couple times it's used there. Like in Genesis 7, it's used 3 times in one verse as we're going through it. Now, out of all these 17 matches, 2 of them you're going to find in Psalms, 1 you're going to find in the book of Daniel, and the rest are split evenly just about between Genesis chapter 1 and Ezekiel chapter 1. So now it begins to kind of narrow down the scope of what we're looking through then through the Bible. So here we're in Genesis chapter 1, where we're finding half of those uses are right here in this day. All right. But the only other real match that we have with any kind of concentration becomes in the book of Ezekiel in chapter 1. So let's just go ahead and head over there to Ezekiel chapter 1. All right. Well, let's see where we're going. Let's just go all the way to the start in chapter 1 and go through the whole thing. That's the easiest way to let it all just kind of flow, because there's a little bit to the setup. Here, let me get a drink real quick. All right, now I got my whisker a little bit wet. All right, so we're in Ezekiel chapter 1. We're just running numbers right now. All right, the word firmament, we want to know what it means. All right, so most of the concentrations are in chapter 1, which we're studying in Genesis, and the rest of the concentrations are mainly in the book of Ezekiel in chapter 1. Now, this is the infamous Ezekiel chapter 1 where everybody makes spooky voodoo. All right, a man named Von Donigan writes a book several years ago, I think it's back in the 80s, called Chariots of the Gods, where he mentions the Bible, but it's only in passing. Most of his concentration were in the Sumerian text, involving a group of Sumerians known as the Anunnaki, or the word actually means those from heaven to earth fell. All right, now, so most of his work is done within those texts, learning to read them and actually understanding the stories that it's based about. Another guy, I can't remember his name, he's the ancient alien dude with the Einstein hair. He's on TV everywhere. He kind of picks up his trumpet and goes on, makes a career, get more power to him, doing something he loves, running all over the world, making a living doing it. Welcome to life. I mean, He's enjoying himself. But nonetheless, they're way out. Both of those guys are way outside of the Bible. Now, understanding the first heaven and earth age, then you're going to be able to understand a little bit about where what happens to Ezekiel actually, its origin actually comes from. And if you're listening to this and you don't understand that, well, you need to go back and pick up the first 2 lectures that we have here in the book of Genesis with this BEV, and that'll clarify that up quite a bit. You'll understand that statement. But nonetheless, let's see what it says here in Ezekiel. Now it came to pass in the 13th year, the 4th month, and the 5th day of the month, that I was among the captives by the river Chebar, that the heavens were opened, and I saw visions of God. So one of the first things, those verses covered Chebar. The river Chebar means a length of time, or a length. And that's what is happening to the Israel, as they've been sent to Babylon as a punishment. They're going to be there 70 years, right? Well, during that time period, Ezekiel is the prophet there on the river Chebar in Babylon. Verse 2, and in the 5th day of the month, which was the 5th year of King Jehoiakim's captivity, the word of the Lord came expressly unto Ezekiel the priest, the son of Buzi, in the land of the Chaldeans, which is Babylon, by the river Chebar, and the hand of the Lord was upon him. Verse 4, and I looked, and behold, a whirlwind came out of the north. Now, this word whirlwind, I want you to hold on to. Now, if you haven't figured out by now, when I say remember to this word or hold on to it, it means we're going to pull it out, all right? Well, this is its own study in its own. If you have a Strong's, you can use it to find every place this word whirlwind is used, and it's a really interesting study on what you come up with. Now, we're just going to cover a couple of them tonight, though. But nonetheless, here I want you to note that it's called a whirlwind here. And this whirlwind consists of a great cloud, a fire enfolding itself, and a brightness was about it. And out of the midst thereof, as the color of amber, and out of the midst of the fire. All right? I want you to build this picture in your mind. What do you say starts with the heavens opening? All right? So we have an expanse here. All right? I'm going to just kind of keep that in mind. And through this expanse comes something heated through the atmosphere. In the 21st century, we know exactly what that looks like. I mean, we've seen it over and over and over and over. Not just get on YouTube. You can see stuff entering the atmosphere all the time. It's a very accurate description of exactly what it looks like when something comes burning in hot, particularly from orbital velocities, or even greater. Verse 5 also, color of amber. Let's go ahead, we're going to turn on our Strong. If you're watching the video, I'm going to turn it back on because we need to address this. Because color and amber are not even Hebrew words. They don't exist. This word color is 5969, all right? And it's A-N, and the word means the eye. And anytime you see this ancient symbol, it means either go to and look or look at with your eye. It's an R-O is what it looks like, and you see how that develops from an eye. But nonetheless, that was color. And amber, amber's another word. It's kashmal, and it's of uncertain derivation, probably bronze or highly polished spectrum metal. So really what Ezekiel is saying here is he sees the heavens open up and something comes screaming in hot, and when it comes down, it's a highly polished object. Yes, right. It's metallic. He sees it with his eye, and it's metallic. We've seen exactly, like I said, what those things look like. So often that's the best translation that gets messed up right there. If that was straightened out really good, people would see. I saw with my eye something metallic. Yeah. If you use bronze or whatever, but it wasn't, let's just say it wasn't wood. It wasn't a wooden chariot. Nonetheless, verse 5. And also let me go back. Verse 5. Where was I? Yes, verse 5. Also out of the midst thereof came the likeness of 4 creatures, and this was their appearance. They had the likeness of a man. All of them looked like a man. Now they're going to be describing some faces here in a minute. Now, what did it just say right there? All 4 of these living creatures look like us. Why? Because we are made in the image of God and the angels. We are made in the image of our own celestial image. All right? So that's why they're called the man. That's why they're referred to as a man. Now listen to the description. Everyone had 4 faces, and everyone had 4 wings, and their feet were straight feet, and the soles of their feet were like the soles of a calf's foot, and they sparkled like the color of burnished brass. Again, color amber. All right. Sole like a straight foot. It's not jointed. So not only is this vehicle capable of moving at very high velocities, but it also doesn't need wheels to land. So it's a VTOL kind of a situation we have going on here. Listen to what it says about them, about their wings. And they had the hands of a man under their wings on their 4 sides, and they 4 had their faces and their wings. And their wings were joined one to another, and they turned not when they went. They went every one straight forward. All right. Now listen to what it said. You're getting a really good description of control surfaces. All right. We have 4 engines. We have 4 different vehicles, all of them with 4 wings. All of them have 4 faces, and they all look like a man. All right. These are cherubims. All right. Now, another places you're going to find these, verse 10, that's where we're going to pick it up with. Another place you're going to find these cherubims, all right, is in the tabernacle in the wilderness in the book of Numbers. All right. The cherubims are what they embroidered in the walls on the inside of the tabernacle of the congregation, right? So in there where the Ark of the Covenant was, these were the four faces that actually stood guard over the very throne of God itself, right? This is portrayed also in heaven in the same way as it is there in the temple. All right, and you're going to see God's throne appear here later, so you're going to have the cherubims. So when they get mobile and get moving, this is exactly what you begin to see, these things like this. Now, the four wings, I want to address them. It said two of them are joined together and two extend down along the body. If you just take a look at like stealth fighter, stealth bomber, all these are that exact kind of configuration. Right? They're exactly the same. I'm not saying this is those, because this is by far much more advanced than anything like that. But nonetheless, control surface is a control surface.
Yep.
All right.
We get an idea.
That's right, that's right. And as for the likeness of their faces, they four had the face of a man and the face of a lion on the right side, and they four had the face of an ox on the left side, and they four also had the face of an eagle. A man, the ox, eagle, and lion, all right? Not only were these faces the faces in the inner chamber of the tabernacle of the congregation, they were also the standards that the children of Israel were camped under. You had three under one to the north, three under one to the south, three tribes to the west, three tribes to the east, all camped under those four symbols. So they're the ancient house of Israel is actually what it means. So undoubtedly these faces on these cherubims they're symbolic. They know what they are. These are the cherubims. They've been in the temple. We've been camped under them. All right, so they understood exactly what it meant by these four faces. All right. At the eagle, there, verse 11. Thus were their faces and their wings were stretched upward. Two wings of every one were joined one to another, like I was saying, and two covered their bodies right down the side, okay? And they went straight forward. Whither the Spirit was to go, they went, and they turned not when they went, all right? Now, what does that mean? Ezekiel's used to like an animal like an ox or a donkey or something like that. To control an animal and make it turn, you turn its head.
Yeah.
And then the animal turns, and then the cart goes with it, all right? All right. These didn't do that. To them, they just went forward and took off, and they didn't turn their head. If they were here, they just moved. Wherever they went, they just moved, all right? Now, this is the cherubims we're talking about. Now, it's important to know because there's also another group of vehicles that are going to be introduced here, not just the cherubims, but you have probably more than one of these other vehicles which we're getting ready to get into, right? Verse 13. And as for the likeness of their living creatures, their appearance was like burning coals of fire, and like the appearance of lamps. And it went up and down among the living creatures, and the fire was bright, and out of the fire went forth lightnings. Here we're probably being
some kind of plasma.
Power source, right? Some type of power source, right? We're talking about
lightning looking.
Right?
There's only a
it's
few
moving,
things
right?
that look like
Discharging,
literally plasma.
Right, just lightning, right? It's power, energy. It's an energy source we're looking at.
And something.
It's the biggest ever-ready battery ever built. All right, imagine. Okay, we have some pretty cool technology that we come up with on our own in flesh bodies. Now imagine over the course of the first heaven and earth age, what kind of technologies were developed by us. I mean, God can do anything and is limitless on his own, but we're not.
Easy with fusion,
things like that. Right. That's right. With eons to work on these things and no reference to time whatsoever. So the kind of things that were developed in the first heaven and earth age are just absurd compared to what we are. And these things become very important in the understanding of these things because that's part of what the Antichrist uses to confuse people with in the last days, right? Which we'll get into just a little bit more. Verse 14. And the living creatures ran and returned as the appearance of a flash of light. Now this is cool. Wherever the Spirit sends them, they just disappear and then reappear. All right. Now who knows how or when, but the only thing that appears to them is just a flash of light here and a reappearance of light over here.
They're just fast.
That's just unbelievably quick. Right. It's just movement without relationship to distance. Is the best way I can think of it is what they're talking about. But verse 15, and now, as for the living creature, behold. All right, so now we have something going on here. It's a little bit different. Now we're going to pick up a different vehicle because the description's a little bit different, all right? Now, as I beheld the living creatures, the four cherubims, behold, one wheel upon the earth by the living creatures with the four faces. All right, we got something else appeared. And the appearance of the wheels and their work was like unto the color of beryl. And they had and they four had one likeness in their appearance, so we had four of them also. And their appearance and their work was like a wheel in the middle of a wheel. All right? And when they went upon their four sides, and they turned not when they went. Now, let's absorb what that was, what he's just talking about. All right? We have circular vehicles, all right? And a wheel, when it goes about its work, it's straight up and down with an axle that runs through it.
It's the wheel
But
within a
these
wheel.
wheels within their wheel were on their side when they went about their work. Did you catch what it said? And they went upon their four sides, and they turned not when they weren't. All right, so we're talking about a wheel, but it's horizontal to the ground, or parallel to the ground, excuse me. Not like it normally would be.
Right.
And it's apparently spinning. Now listen to what it says about it, all right? Verse 18, and as for the rings, they were so high that they were dreadful, and their rings were full of eyes round about them four. All right? So the rings are talking about the heights. It's like he's standing there, and Ezekiel saying, imagine being poor Ezekiel, all right? This guy,
He's already peed
he's the most advanced thing he's seen is the Ark of the Covenant, and it was a pretty
It's
box.
a golden box.
Yeah. And then this thing all of a sudden's in front of him, and he's saying, when he looks up, he says, I don't know how tall it was, but it scared me. It was huge. I mean, you imagine, if this happened to me, I would pee on myself. I really would. There would be no reaction. I would just,
You just turn around, drop everything, and run.
And run, right. I mean, Ezekiel's doing good holding form, and he's also telling there were eyes round about. He can see in the vehicle. They say they got round portholes while they're, we talked about this in the last time we kind of covered this subject about the early days of aviation. They used to put square windows, but when they started pressurizing cabins, because they weren't round and distributed the force evenly around it, they would develop cracks at the corners. And then over time, it would down the airplane. And then when they finally figured that out, well, it helped make aviation much safer when it came to pressurized vessels flying around in the atmosphere. So nonetheless, he's seeing in this thing, he's looking in, he can see what's going on. He's already said, I can look in there, I can see men, they're running back and forth. Their bodies look like burning coals of fire. They have a power source that's emitting lightning that's going around. This thing is sitting in front of Ezekiel, and Ezekiel is just trying to come up with words to describe what's happening to him. And the best he can come up with is, I had a vision. All right, but as you can see, that really spawned a little bit short from what's actually happened to him. Right, that's right. Where are we? Let's see. Rings. Okay, yes. Verse 19. And when the living creatures went, the wheels went with them. Well, why? Listen, it'll tell you why. And when the living creatures were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up. Verse 20. Wherever so the Spirit was to go, they went. Hither was their spirit to go. And the wheels were lifted up over against them, for the spirit of the living creatures, the cherubim, all right, or the spirit of the living creature was in the wheels, all right? So we're not talking about, this is a chariot, but buddy, we're not talking about something like an old school chariot with a horse.
No.
All right? This is a vehicle designed to travel through space, time, through the firmament, and deliver. We'll see what it delivers here. All right? Verse 21. And when those went, and when those stood, these stood. Why? Because they're in it. And the vehicle moves, the people or the creatures inside of it are going to move with it. All right? And when those were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up over against them, for the spirit of the creature was in the wheels. Repeated twice in a row for emphasis so you won't get it wrong. All right? Now, a lot of Christians have problems with all this, all right? And most of that's because it's been born again and this other numbnuts with the hair.
Yeah.
All right? And they kind of distance themselves from them because it seems a little bit spooky and they don't know where these things come from. But if you understand the first two verses of the Bible, then you understand where these things actually do come from, what they actually are. Because if you make more out of it than what it is, you turn into Van Donigan, where it's chariots of the gods, or it's ancient aliens, and you begin to develop your own religion based on those things solely. All right, that's what you see happening in Samaria, and that's why.
And they're just
it's because of these things.
First stage vehicles.
Right, it's first stage vehicle. Right, it's a glorified car. That's all it is. Right, verse 22. And the likeness, now listen to this. And the likeness of the firmament, rakuah, like we're talking about, upon their heads of the living creatures was as the color of a terrible crystal stretched forth over their heads. And under the firmament were their wings straight, the one toward the other. And each one had two which covered it on this side, and each one had two which covered it on that side, their bodies. And when they went, I heard the noise of their wings, all right? Now he's using wings because that's how things fly to Ezekiel. It's a bird, it flies, it uses wings. You don't know how it's flying, but it's flying, so it has to have wings. He's just trying to describe what he's seeing in the best words that he has possible, all right? But whenever it flew, what did it say? It said it made a great noise, like a noise of great waters, is the voice of Almighty, the voice of speech, and the noise of an host. And when they stood and let down their wings, all right? So what have they done? He's come in, he's let down their wings. The other vehicles are set down on those soles like a calf's foot, all right? Because they're staging. This is a setup. He's showing him what's going on, all right? Verse 25, and there was a voice from the midst of the firmament, which was over their heads, which is why we came here. All right, it started out with the skies were open and I saw visions of God. That opening is what they're referring to as the firmament here. And that firmament is a doorway. On the other side of that is heaven, the heavenly realm. And on this side of it is the earthly realm. All right, now, another word that we've used before to describe the firmament is iris, when we did a two horses lecture, because that's the one that it uses in Greek.
Yeah.
All right, but it's still talking about that great expanse, that great opening, and it's always present wherever God is.
Yeah.
All right, so that's what we're talking about with the firmament. All right, verse 26, and above the firmament, but nonetheless, so one more thing, that it's through this firmament where the instructions for the cherubim is actually coming from. It's coming from that realm. God is directing them on exactly what to do and how to do it. All right? So it's through that firmament they're actually receiving instructions from Almighty Himself. Right. And above the firmament that was over their heads was a likeness of a throne. And as the appearance of a sapphire stone, excuse me, and upon the likeness of the throne was a likeness as the appearance of a man above it. Excuse me, and I keep burping. No, excuse me.
Dr. Pepper.
That is, that'll get it done, that's right. So nonetheless, here on this vehicle then, we have a throne, the throne of God that's being transported, all right? God doesn't need a vehicle to go anywhere, but we're transporting His throne from place to place with this, all right? Because remember, it's over between the altar and the throne is where the Ark of the Covenant is where the cherubims are always, because that's their job, all right, is to guard those things, those particular things. Nonetheless, verse 27, and I saw the color of amber, like we were talking about in the beginning, as the appearance of fire round about within it, for the appearance of his loins even upward, and from the appearance of his loins even downward, I saw its appearance of fire, and it was bright round about. And just like we were talking about the cherubims, had the same appearance. We've talked about this before just a little bit. Since the cherubims will never be born of the flesh, they probably already received, you're getting a glimpse of maybe what the third age body actually looks like. You know, I don't know what it's constructed of. It'll be recognizable as who we are, but constructed of a completely different material altogether. As different as it is from the first heaven and earth age to this one to that one, they'll all be completely different. And so what that exactly entails, I have no idea. Sounds fun to me. All right. Now listen to this, verse 28. The brightness round about it. So we're talking about that great Shekinah glory, that bow, all right, the firmament, the iris, rakial, and there's appearance of the bow, which is in the cloud in the day of rain. So we're talking about a rainbow. So it looks like that because it does all these colors we've had references for, many different colors. And even the iris, well, that is described often as a rainbow, as
there's
a
a couple
as well.
of
Eyes
solar
have that
systems
color.
out there that look like rips.
Yes,
You know
right.
what I
Oh,
mean?
there's cool stuff.
Those are cool looking. Almost like
So who
iris
knows what's
firmament.
actually right? Who knows what's all actually right out there? Nonetheless.
That's how I see it.
And the day of rain, where it was a cloud and day of rain. So it was the appearance of the brightness round about. And there was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord. And when I saw it, I fell on my face, and I heard a voice of one that spake. All right. So this is the infamous chapter 1 of Ezekiel. All right. So you can clearly see that if you put just kind of away the Christian mythology about chariots and fire and things like this, But you really begin to develop a different picture then of what the whirlwind actually is.
Yeah.
Now hold on to that word whirlwind, all right? Because from here I want to go to 2 Kings chapter 2. Because that word is used again. 2 Kings chapter 2. Let's see. Where are we going to pick it up? 2 Kings chapter 2, I guess. Verse 1. Why not? That works good. Yes. All right, you there? All right. All right, so we're talking, I said when we were in Ezekiel, hold on to the term whirlwind, right? Because the whirlwind is going to be used to describe like the overall events of what happened with the words with Ezekiel. Well, listen to what it says here. Now here in 2 Kings, we come to Elijah and Elijah. Now Elijah is one of the end time prophets almost everybody agrees on, right? Now, the reason why they say he's eligible because of the events here in 2 Kings chapter 2. It's time for Elijah to depart. God's already told him, I'm going to take Elijah. And then these are the events that goes on. So I want you to listen to now the words that it says. Chapter 2, verse 1 of 2 Kings. And it came to pass when the Lord would take up Elijah into heaven by a whirlwind. All right, so we're talking about the same thing then that's going on with Ezekiel is happening here with Elijah. All right, and Elijah went with Elijah from Gilgal. And Elijah said unto Elijah, tarry here, I pray thee, for the Lord has sent me to Bethel. And Elijah said unto him, as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee. For so they went down to Bethel. Now Elijah tells his protege Elijah, stay here, God's sending me here. Now they already know Elijah's getting ready to be taken. Elijah, and there's no way that Elijah, his friend, is going to miss this. Yeah. Now, it can't be overstated the relationship between Elijah and Elijah. It is really important because Elijah's a prophet, but Elijah is his friend. These guys have been welded together through some serious stuff, all right? And at the end of it, it's time for Elijah to receive his payment, all right? Yeah. He won't suffer a fleshly death because of the work that he's done here on the earth. One of only two people that it's written that this has happened to, and the other one was Enoch, of course, in the book of Genesis. So all this is going on. Now, these men have been through thick and thin together. They've lived through, Jezebel and her reign where she killed all the prophets. And then after that's all settled, the first thing Elijah, the prophet, does is he builds a school for the prophets to start getting them all built back up again. Right? And to wake all this. So Elijah has been there with him. And he's telling him, here, you stay here and I'm going to go because God sent me. He said, there ain't no way. You know, you can't be over. These guys are welded together. They're friends. He's not going to let his friend go face all this by himself.
No, you're going to wait.
Right?
I'll go with you.
That's right. I'll go with you. Now, in the same way that these men are welded together, the people in the last days that begin to walk this path together, as things begin to unfold, and they get welded together in exactly the same way Elijah and Elijah are. All right? And it becomes very important. Because part of their faith is due to the fact that they've walked a path together and they've seen some things happen. Things they can't explain, things that they know if it wasn't for God, they would have been dead a long time ago. All right? But nonetheless, here we are with that. In verse 2, and Elijah said unto Elijah, he's already there. Verse 3, and the sons of the prophets that were in Bethel came forth to Elijah and said unto him, knowest thou that the Lord will take away thy master from thy head today? And he said, yea, I know it, hold your peace. He said, yeah, I know, we know it. But apparently, God's been telling the sons of these prophets, now these are the sons of the prophets that have been killed, all right? But God's apparently been working with this other group, telling them, hey, look, Elijah's coming, I'm coming to take him, so be aware, all right? Because they're already aware of it, all right? Verse 4, and Elijah said unto him, Elijah, tarry here, I pray thee, for the Lord has sent me to Jericho. And he said, as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee. So they went until they came to Jericho. Well, again, it's not about to leave his friend. All right? And plus, he wants to see what's going down. I have no doubt. He wants to see. He's curious. All right? And again, the sons of the prophets that were Jericho came to Elijah and said unto him, knowest thou that the Lord will take away thy master from thy head today? And he answered, yea, I know it. Hold your peace. I said, yeah, I know. Just relax. Basically, but come on, because they're probably pretty excited too. They're going to be just as curious as to what's going on, right? Verse 6, and Elijah said unto him, tarry, I pray thee here, for the Lord has sent me to Jordan. And he said, as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee. So they went in, and two went on. And the 50 men of the sons of the prophets that went and stood in a view afar off, and they stood by the Jordan. All right, let's set this picture up. This is the third time. All right, now they're facing the Jordan River. You have Elijah and Elijah standing down at the mouth of the Jordan River. You have these 50 sons of the prophets that know this region really well. So they've moved and went to a high place far off where they can see exactly really well what's going on down there. All right. Now they're close enough that they can see Elijah and Elijah. All right, and listen to what it says. And Elijah took his mantle and wrapped it together, made it up in a nice little package, and smote the waters, and they were divided hither and thither. And so they too went over on dry land. All right. This ties right into the book of Exodus, so we're in chapter 14, where we'll be Wednesday, is they're actually crossing the Red Sea. And this exact term is used there too. They went forth on dry land, crossing the Red Sea. All right. Now, they were supposed to go right to the Jordan, but they spent 40 years running around in the wilderness because they screwed up. But in the book of Joshua, when they go into the promised land finally, when the priest's feet carrying the Ark of the Covenant touch the Jordan River, it divides. And it talks about the water piles up on one side as Israel walks again on dry land. All right? And it becomes kind of important, all right? So you're saying in the end days, particularly then in the last days, then in the path that you walk, then you're not going to have to sweat it because your feet really won't even get muddy.
Yeah.
Is really what it's saying. That's already dry land the whole way. The way is already prepared. But nonetheless, people only know about the Red Sea, but there's 4 times altogether that the water's parted, and 2 of them are for one for Elijah, and we'll see one for Elijah here in a minute. But nonetheless, so he slaps it, and the waters divide, and they walk across on dry land right out of the city, right across the Jordan River, out into the wilderness. All right? Verse 9, and it came to pass when they were gone over that Elijah said to Elijah, ask what I shall do for thee before I'm taken away from thee. What is it you want, Elijah? You've been a good friend. Is there anything I can do? And Elijah said, I pray thee, let a double portion of thy spirit be upon me. And he said, thou askest a hard thing. Nevertheless, if thou see me when I am taken from thee, it shall be so unto thee. But if not, it shall not be so. So he sets up the condition here. Now, think about this. What Elijah is asking for, Elijah cannot give.
Yeah.
First, it's his spirit. There's only one. He can't give double what he has. And Elijah and Elijah both know that it's God that does it anyway. All right? And that's why I tell him, I can't do that. I can't give you twice what I have. All right? But I know one who can. So if you see me leave, then it'll be just what you ask. And that's actually evidence. The Companion Bible has a list of miracles for Elijah, and he does 8, and then Elijah does 16 before it's over. Exactly double what Elijah did. Right?
That's awesome.
Right, exactly as he had asked his friend. Right. But then I said there's the conditions that it will come to pass. In verse 11, and it came to pass when they still went on, so they walked just a little farther and talked, that behold, there appeared a chariot of fire and horses of fire, and parted them asunder, and Elijah went up by the whirlwind into heaven. So this same whirlwind that Ezekiel sees is what God sends to collect Elijah and take him back home. So this same event with these big vehicles, these gigantic chariots come and pick these up. And remember these 50 over here? Well, you can bet that spread around pretty quick. You know, that's some good witnesses that they had set up for this. Listen to what it says. And Elijah saw it. All right, so he cried, my father, the chariots of Israel and the horsemen thereof. All right, so now think about this. What did he just call them? The horsemen of Israel. All right, so where else do you hear about a lot of horsemen and chariots?
Yeah.
It's right there in the book of Revelation. It's full of them.
Yep.
All right, so if you know what you're looking for, then you really know that you're looking at a kind of a code that's being pushed along. If you study enough, you'll catch on it. The whirlwinds are the same thing. All right, and they're these spiritual chariots, these spiritual horsemen. All right. Nonetheless, but Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. So that vehicle itself picked him up, and off he went. And Elijah and the 50 saw it. And Elijah saw it, verse 13. And he took up also the mantle of Elijah that fell from him. Why? Because he doesn't need it. Elijah received his spiritual body.
Yeah,
he has no need for his old mantle, his old dress. All right? And it fell from him and went back and stood by the bank of the Jordan. And he took the mantle of Elijah that fell from him and smote the waters and said, where is the Lord thy God, Elijah? Now where is the Lord God of Elijah? Elijah. Now that's a question, but it's not meant to be answered. It's just, it's actually kind of probably a celebration and a happy thing. He just lived through something terrifying. Yeah. He's probably just celebrating to be alive. All right. And when he also had smitten the waters, they parted hither and thither, and Elijah went over. So he goes back to the Jordan, and the water divides for him, and he walks back into Israel. Now, that is, if you talk about a sign, those 50 sons of the prophets right there just saw that the mantle was passed on to Elijah as a prophet in Israel with no questions whatsoever. Elijah parts the water with his, God does it, of course, but Elijah going out and Elijah coming in. Yeah. Or Elijah going out and Elijah coming in. Those are hard to keep straight when you're saying.
Yeah, right.
Nah. Talk Eli and Levi. But there we go. There we have it. Now, so that's a pretty powerful little statement there. And you put that in with the firmament, and when you put it with Ezekiel, and then here in 2 Kings. Now, there's another I want to do one more place in 2 Kings. Go to 2 Kings chapter 6, and then we will be done for the night. Most likely. Pick it up in verse 11. All right. Now Elijah's gone, right? Elijah's gone, and it's Elijah, and Elijah's picked up a new protege, just like Elijah did with him, all right? Now, in the meantime, there's been some stuff going on. Israel's in a war with Syria. All right? Abinadab is the name of the king. It's the king of Syria. All right. Now, the king of Syria keeps trying to send his troops in kind of like a sneaky way into Israel, and God keeps telling Elijah to tip off the king that so he can go put troops there to keep Syria from invading their territory and getting a foothold in their territory. He does it not once but twice, and does it several times over and over, probably before the truth was known. All right. So much so that the king of Syria knows that he has a spy somewhere close. It's happening so often. Every time he tries to get a geographical foothold, it gets cut off when he's making the move. So soon he's beginning to realize it doesn't take him long to figure out who it is. All right. And so the king just calls out his people on it. Who is this? Who is doing this? All right. And this is what it says in verse 11. Therefore, the heart of the king of Syria was sore troubled for this thing, because he was trying to invade Israel, and every time he makes a tactical move, he's getting blocked before he can get anywhere with it. All right? And he called his servants and said unto them, will ye not show me which of us is of the king of Israel? And one of his servants said, none, my lord, O king, but Elijah the prophet, that is in Israel. Telleth the king of Israel the words that thou speakest in thy bedchamber. Saying this bedchamber, that's just saying it's the most secret place that you can say. You're whispering that stuff to your wife, and somehow Elijah's knowing what's going on, and he's telling the king of Israel. All right? And he said, verse 13, he said, go and spy where he is, and I will send and fetch him. And it was told him, saying, behold, he is in Dothan. Verse 14. Therefore sent he thither horses and chariots, a great host, and they came by night and compassed about the city. Now, these are old school chariots and horses. This is King of Syria's army. All right, this is the same kind of army that's chasing Israel out of the Exodus. All right, terrestrial chariots, terrestrial horses with horsemen that are on it. All right, and he wants Elijah. Now, I don't think he's thought too much. It's kind of like catching a cat that doesn't want to be held. You can catch him. Well, good luck. Now that you caught him, now the hard part begins. I mean, what are you going to do? Hold on to him a little bit. That's right. So he's not really thought this through. Because if he puts his hands on Elijah, well, this is going to be like trying to hold on to that cat. That's just going to be nothing but painful. All right? But nonetheless, they sneak around and they're trying to catch Elijah. All right, at Thor. Verse 15, and when the servant of the man of God, this is the new protege then for that Elijah has picked up. All right? And when the servant of the man of God was risen early and gone forth, behold, the host compassed the city, both with horses and chariots. And his servant said unto him, alas, my master, how shall we do? What are we going to do? He said, we're surrounded. So they finally caught us. Okay? But now, this protege doesn't know the steps that Elijah and Elijah took together. He has no idea really about the reality that they went through. But he's getting ready to get a little lesson in it, all right? Verse 16, and he answered, fear not, all right? For they that be with us are more than they that be with them. All right? And this has to confuse the snot out of this dude. All right? He's looking out here, and all he's seeing is his death in 1,000 different bad ways. And Elijah, he's saying, don't worry about it. You can look out and see all that. The things that are with us are much more than them. I love this scene. This is so funny. All right, 17. And Elijah prayed and said, Lord, I pray thee open his eyes that he may see. All right, and the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire round about Israel. Same thing was going on in chapter 2 with Elijah, still going on with Elijah here and his new protege, and they're still protecting him. All right, listen to what it says. And when they came down to him, Elijah prayed unto the Lord. So he prayed to God and said, smite this people, I pray thee, with blindness. Now, Elijah could have asked to kill them.
Yeah.
But he didn't. He didn't just blind them. I think Elijah's got a sense of humor like Elijah's, what I think is happening. But nonetheless, smite these people with blindness. And he smote them with blindness around, according to the word of Elijah. And Elijah said unto them, this is not the way, neither is this the city, follow me. He's really saying, okay, I will bring you to the man whom you see. You say, okay, I'm not the one you're looking for. They're blind, but follow me and I'll take you to him. So he's leading the entire Syrian army blind around, and he's the guy they're looking for.
Yeah.
All right. And Elijah said unto them, follow me, I will bring you to him who you seek. But he led them to Samaria, so right into the heartland of Israel, Samaria and Judea. He leads them right into the city, the capital city. All right? And it came to pass, verse 20, when they were come to Samaria, that Elijah said, Lord, open the eyes of these men that they may see. And the Lord opened their eyes, and they saw, and behold, they were in the midst of Samaria. Right in the middle of the territory they were trying to conquer, they're standing in it now. Have no idea how they got there, they just followed a voice. Ended up in the middle of Israel. And the king of Israel, now listen to what it says. And the king of Israel said unto Elijah, when he saw them, my father, shall I smite them? Shall I smite them? All right, listen to what it says. And he answered, thou shalt not smite them. Wouldest thou smite those whom thou hast taken captive with thy sword and with thy bow? All right. Now this is a law statement, all right? Because they're not allowed to just execute prisoners.
Yeah.
There's rules. We follow that through. Our armed forces, we don't carry out executions on the battlefield. It's against the law. As a matter of fact, if you do, you will go to jail for a very, very long time, even in condition of war. So we're very, very strict about those things. That even carries through even to this day. But no, you wouldn't execute them. What does he tell him to do? He said bread and water before them, they may eat and drink, and go to their masters. All right? So he's saying, no, what you're going to do is you're going to set forward a banquet for these people, and you're going to feed them, and then you're going to send them home.
Yeah.
All right. Now, think about what that does. By the time that happens, and then they send all this army back, imagine the stories that they're going to be told about what's happened to them while they were in Israel. All right. And listen to what it says. And there appeared and he prepared great provisions for them, and they had eaten and drunk. He sent them away, and when they went to their masters, and so the bands of the Syrians came no more into the land of Israel. Worked perfectly. If it would have killed them, it just would have inflamed the war.
Yeah, it was incited war.
Right, it would have incited more war. But instead, what did he do? the prophet of God instead feeds them and sends them home alive, okay? And in doing so, it stops all the raids and incursions from Syria into Israel. Okay, I thought that was all very important to add into all that, just because you see these things. Now, these provisions, that goes a lot deeper too, all right? Think about the last days, you know. You have all these people that are spiritually very, very blind, okay? So a lot of ways they're a lot like the Syrian army. They don't know, they're very spiritually unaware, even though they may have been raised in church and go 3 days a week and all that stuff, but still they remain very spiritually blind. And in the end then, we prepare a banquet for them that they can feast upon. And then when they go out, it's all a part of that, where people be delivered up and then, you know, and their testimony then will be heard around the world, fulfilling all that. But nonetheless, that is the whirlwind / firmament kind of lecture. But that's day 2 of creation. Now, this doorway, it actually makes sense that this is a doorway. Day 1, you have the heavens prepared for this heaven and earth age. During day 2, you have a doorway made, because day 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 are all working on the earth itself.
Yeah.
All right, and that's next week on next Sundays where we'll take it up. Then we'll start on day 3 with that in mind. Okay, wait a minute. Excuse me, we're not talking about the creation of the earth itself. We're just talking about conditions that exist in this heaven and earth age. And that limits that back to the next, 20, 30,000 years, whatever, just something like that. Thousands of years versus millions of years for this heaven and earth age, which in the end will appear just like a blip in our memory. That really made sense to me when you said that the other day. Will we remember this? Well, we remember it, but it's in the scope of an eternity. It's just it's something that'll fade into memory. Yeah, really. Quickly. I mean, quickly, right? Quickly. It end up like childhood memories.
Yeah, it'll be that life lesson will be learned.
Deja vu kind of a feeling,
You'll
like
know
that, right?
What's right and wrong because of that.
Because of that,
The lesson is learned, not the experience.
Not the experience, right? The lesson. You take the lesson with you, not so much
you leave the experience behind.
You just a blip. It just becomes like remembering when you went to the lake as a kid. Or something like that. It's just a memory of something.
And you just remember flashes.
Just flashes of it and parts of it, right? Maybe if you need to as you go. But I think this is a real cool lecture. And we're going to see these vehicles again. I mean, and they're out there right now. Like you said, he prayed and his eyes be opened. Elijah knew they were there, but the servant didn't. And when his eyes, that means they're still there. So the firmament probably gets the veil put over it on the 7th day when God rests.
Yeah, probably.
He's done. So the veil goes across, and no longer we have those direct interactions like they would through that period, to that time period. And it's because of those interactions during that time period that we have all these these Sumerian tablets and the days of Noah and things like that because of those things.
Good,
I hope everybody liked that. Have a good night.